She was worth $30 million before she even turned 21. She starred in box office hits, topped music charts, and redefined teen stardom. But then everything fell apart. Mugshots replaced magazine covers, courtrooms replaced red carpets, and then she disappeared. No warning, no goodbye. What happened to Lindsay Lohan? Where did the millions go? Why did Hollywood's golden girl vanish from the spotlight? And could the shocking truth behind her downfall be darker than we ever imagined? There was a time when you couldn't go a single day without seeing her face. On TV, in movies, on magazine covers, billboard ads, red carpets. Lindsay Lohan wasn't just famous, she was everywhere. By the early 2000s, she had become the perfect formula, Disney charm, teenage rebellion, undeniable talent, and a face that could sell anything. She was America's sweetheart, and then she was gone. No more film premieres, no more late-night interviews. Her smile that once lit up every room vanished. In just a few years, Lindsay went from being Hollywood's most bankable teen actress to a ghost of her former self. Fans were confused. Critics were brutal. The media, ruthless. And behind all the headlines, mugshots, and whispers, there was a deeper truth. A series of choices, betrayals, addictions, and battles that the cameras couldn't always capture. But how does someone with $30 million, a global fan base, and unlimited potential disappear almost overnight? To understand the downfall, we need to go back. Before the scandals, before the paparazzi frenzy, back to where it all began. Because the real story of Lindsay Lohan's fall starts with her innocent rise and the role that changed everything. It all started with freckles, a charming smile, and a role that made Hollywood believe in magic again. In 1998, a 12-year-old Lindsay Lohan stunned the world in The Parent Trap, playing not one, but two roles. Hallie and Annie weren't just twin characters. They were proof that Lindsay wasn't just another cute kid actor, she was something else, a phenomenon in the making. With natural timing, charisma beyond her years, and a screen presence producers would kill for, Lindsay became the new face of Disney overnight. But with every glowing headline came the seeds of something darker, something almost invisible at the time. Behind that smile, a young girl juggling divorcing parents, intense studio pressure, and a growing machine around her built to make millions. And make millions she did. From Freaky Friday to Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen and, of course, the cultural earthquake that was Mean Girls, Lindsay's fame skyrocketed. Studios were fighting for her. Brands were lining up. And the media, they couldn't get enough. But here's the part Hollywood doesn't like to talk about. When you rise that fast, that young, the fall isn't just painful, it's public. And the very same cameras that once adored you will turn you into clickbait the moment you slip. And Lindsay, she slipped, but no one expected just how far she'd fall. The girl from The Parent Trap was no longer being celebrated for her talent. She was being hunted for her breakdowns. Mugshots, arrests, rehab, headlines like, Lindsay Lohan hits rock bottom again. Her name became a punchline. But how? Does a childhood dream become a media disaster? Before the tabloids tore her apart, there was a time when Lindsay Lohan owned Hollywood. She didn't just act in a hit film, she led a global movement. To understand her fall, we first have to witness her full power. And that starts with one iconic movie, and a generation that still quotes it today. At the peak of her career, Lindsay Lohan was unstoppable. She was one of the highest paid young actresses in the world. $7.5 million per film, personal endorsement deals, music royalties, fashion campaigns. By 2006, her net worth was estimated at over $30 million. She was buying houses in Beverly Hills, throwing lavish parties in the Hollywood Hills, and jet-setting across Europe like royalty. Private stylists, personal chefs, luxury cars, diamonds, five-star hotels. She wasn't just rich, she was living like a legend. But then, almost silently, the money began to vanish. How does someone worth $30 million lose it all? Some say it was the addiction. Rehab wasn't just emotional, it was expensive. Others point to legal fees. After all, Lindsay was arrested at least 6 times, faced multiple lawsuits, and paid massive penalties just to stay out of jail. Then there were the IRS problems. By 2012, the government seized her bank accounts over $233,000 in unpaid taxes. Her once vibrant career slowed down. Roles disappeared, income dried up, but the spending, that didn't stop. And when the roles stopped paying, she started selling personal items, selling appearances. In one case, she was reportedly paid $100,000 just to attend a party in Dubai. Her $30 million empire was crumbling, and fast. By 2018, insiders revealed that Lindsay's net worth had plummeted to less than $800,000. A shocking number, considering how much she had once earned. From mega mansions to moving in with friends, from world tours to vanishing from the public eye, Lindsay was no longer a star. She was a warning sign. But what did Hollywood do while she fell? Did they try to save her, or did they turn their backs? As the millions faded and the headlines turned brutal, one by one, the studios that once begged for her signature stopped calling. They loved her when she was profitable, but when she became unpredictable, they dropped her like a scandal waiting to happen. Let's uncover how Hollywood's golden girl became its most feared liability. This isn't just the story of a girl who lost fame, it's the story of an industry that chews up young talent and spits them out when they break. Lindsay Lohan's collapse isn't just tragic, it's terrifying, because it's not just her story. It's a pattern, a blueprint that Hollywood has followed time and time again. Build them up, idolize them, burn them out. And when they crash, profit from the chaos. Let's call it what it really is. A Hollywood horror story, dressed in designer gowns and red carpet smiles. At just 18, Lindsay was offered alcohol at celebrity events. At 19, she was already in rehab. By 21, she was arrested for DUI. By 25, she had become a punchline in late-night comedy. But what most people don't know is this. While tabloids showed her stumbling out of clubs, what they didn't show was a young woman crying for help, suffering in silence, surrounded by fake friends and greedy handlers. People profiting off her fame, enabling her addiction, and protecting her just enough to keep the money flowing, but never enough to truly help. And when she finally broke, they all vanished. She was mocked for her mental health, shamed for her choices, and ostracized from an industry she helped shape. This wasn't just a fall from grace, this was a systematic collapse, watched by millions as entertainment. A real-life horror show, starring a girl who once lit up the world, and then silence. No red carpets, no movies, no interviews. Lindsay Lohan vanished. But she didn't just hide, she left Hollywood. The question is, where did she go and why? Before The Parent Trap, before the fame, before the headlines, Lindsay Lohan was already in front of the camera. At just 3 years old, she signed with Ford Models, one of the biggest modeling agencies in the world. Most toddlers were learning how to write their names. Lindsay, she was learning how to smile for the camera, pose for brands, and sell products. From Toys R Us to Calvin Klein kids. By the age of 6, she had already appeared in over 60 commercials. 60. Think about that. A child who had been working almost her entire life before even stepping foot on a film set. That kind of early exposure can create stars, but it can also steal childhoods. And behind the glittering lights was something else. A family hungry for fame. Her mother, Dina, was a former dancer who saw Lindsay as the family's ticket to stardom. Her father, Michael, was in and out of jail, and soon in and out of tabloids. Lindsay wasn't just a cute kid with talent, she was the breadwinner, the face, the brand, and Hollywood noticed. It wasn't long before casting directors started whispering, "Who's the redhead with the spark in her eye?" The child who could cry on cue, nail lines in one take, and captivate a room full of adults without even realizing it. That spark landed her the life-changing audition for The Parent Trap. But it also lit a fire that would eventually burn too bright. And then came one moment, one audition tape that would shift everything. A young Lindsay walks into a room. No ego, no nerves, just raw, natural talent. She read the lines, she became the characters. And Disney, they didn't just see a kid, they saw a star. Next, let's go behind the scenes of the audition that transformed Lindsay Lohan from a child model into a household name. In 1998, a young Lindsay Lohan stepped onto the scene and forever changed the landscape of family films. The Parent Trap, a remake of the 1961 classic, was the perfect opportunity for the world to meet a fresh new face. And that face was Lindsay's. But what most people don't know is that this was Lindsay's big break, the film that catapulted her from a child model into a full-fledged Disney darling. It wasn't just the fact that Lindsay played two roles, twin sisters separated at birth and later reunited. It was how she captured the hearts of audiences. She had something special, a natural charm that made her so relatable, so easy to root for. She wasn't just a cute kid, she was a rising star, and her performance had the kind of authenticity that made it unforgettable. And it didn't take long for Disney to recognize it. The casting agents saw Lindsay as more than just a talented actress. They saw the potential for something bigger. Disney had found their next big thing, and they were willing to build an empire around her. The Parent Trap was a success, but more than that, it was the start of a legacy. Suddenly, Lindsay wasn't just a child actress, she was a household name, an icon for a new generation of moviegoers. But fame has a cost, and behind the success, there were whispers. Whispers that would soon turn into shouting headlines. The sweet, girl-next-door image that Lindsay embodied in The Parent Trap would soon be overshadowed by the pressures and expectations of stardom. Disney made Lindsay a star, but they didn't prepare her for the price that would come with the fame they gave her. And that price? It would be steep. But the Disney darling image wasn't going to last forever. With fame came an entirely new set of challenges. challenges that would soon spin Lindsay's life out of control. In the next chapter, we explore how Lindsay went from the sweet girl of The Parent Trap to the tabloid target she would become, a star caught between the pressures of Hollywood and the expectations of the public. Lindsay Lohan wasn't just a rising star, she was now a full-blown phenomenon. After the success of The Parent Trap, Hollywood had its eyes set on her, and Lindsay was about to cement her place as the teen queen of the early 2000s. In 2003, Lindsay starred in the hit film Freaky Friday, a comedy where she swapped places with her mom, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. The movie was a huge success, but it wasn't just the film that made waves. It was Lindsay herself. Her charming performance, the perfect mix of comedy and heart, caught the attention of millions. Freaky Friday didn't just make her a household name, it solidified her status as a teen idol. Critics and fans alike couldn't get enough. Lindsay was everywhere, on magazine covers, in interviews, and most importantly, on the big screen. And it wasn't just Freaky Friday. 2004 brought another massive hit, Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen, where Lindsay played the role of a girl navigating high school chaos with a flair for drama. The movie struck a chord with teenage audiences, and Lindsay was officially the face of teen comedies. She was unstoppable, a star on the rise with every new project under her belt. The world adored her. She was the perfect blend of beauty, talent, and relatability. But while Lindsay seemed to be on top of the world, something was brewing beneath the surface. Hollywood was ruthless, and the pressure to constantly deliver hit films was mounting. And with it came something more dangerous than just pressure: expectations. The more successful Lindsay became, the harder it was to stay in the spotlight without falling prey to the dark side of fame. The tabloids loved her. Too much. Every move, every date, every mistake became a headline. Behind the glitz and glamour, Lindsay was beginning to feel the weight of being constantly in the public eye. But Lindsay's personal struggles didn't stay hidden for long. As her fame grew, so did the pressure to maintain the perfect image. The smile, the laughter, the flawless appearance, they were all part of the act. But soon, the cracks began to show. Let's take a deeper look into the price of perfection and the personal battles Lindsay had to face in a world that only seemed to care about her public persona. It was 2004, and Lindsay Lohan was about to do the unthinkable. She wasn't just starring in another hit movie, she was about to become part of pop culture history. Mean Girls, the film that would define an entire generation, was released in April 2004. And with it, Lindsay Lohan became an icon. The story of Katie Heron, the awkward yet smart girl who gets swept into the high school social hierarchy, resonated with so many. It wasn't just the sharp humor and the unforgettable lines, it was Lindsay's performance that captured the essence of the character. Critics raved, audiences adored it, and the movie grossed $129 million worldwide, but Mean Girls wasn't just a financial success. It became a cultural phenomenon. The movie's lines, its characters, and its references became a permanent part of pop culture. From "you can't sit with us" to "that is so fetch," the quotes seemed to echo through every hallway, every classroom, every living room. Lindsay Lohan wasn't just a star anymore, she was the star. She was the face of a cultural shift. The shy, smart girl from The Parent Trap had evolved into the queen bee of high school films. But what made Lindsay's performance in Mean Girls so special was that it wasn't just a role. It was the perfect marriage between her real-life persona and the character she portrayed. Katie was a girl who struggled to find herself, just like Lindsay, who was balancing fame, expectations, and her own personal life in the harsh spotlight. But as Mean Girls skyrocketed, so did Lindsay's visibility, both in the industry and in the tabloid world. She was on top, and Hollywood loved it. In many ways, Lindsay had become the embodiment of what every teen wanted to be. She was confident, beautiful, and loved by all. Yet, beneath it all, the toll of her growing fame was about to be felt in ways no one could have predicted. But behind the glitz of Mean Girls and the record-breaking success of her films, Lindsay's world wasn't as perfect as it seemed. There was a price to pay for being the Hollywood darling, and the cost of constant scrutiny and unrealistic expectations was about to catch up with her. In the next chapter, we'll dive deep into the dark side of Lindsay's fame. The pressures, the personal battles, and the struggles behind the glittering lights of Hollywood. By the mid-2000s, Lindsay Lohan had reached a level of success that many actors could only dream of. She was a box office draw, and her movies were consistently raking in millions. Her star power had officially been monetized, and the studios were paying her handsomely for it. In 2005, Lindsay's career hit a high point. She was making an astounding $7.5 million per movie. That number wasn't just impressive, it was a clear sign that Lindsay was one of the highest paid actresses of her generation. Movies like Herbie, Fully Loaded, and Just My Luck were huge for her career. Lindsay was everywhere, on the cover of magazines, starring in blockbusters, and living the kind of lifestyle that most people could only dream of. She wasn't just a rising star, she had arrived. Hollywood loved her. Audiences loved her. Her image was practically untouchable. The world couldn't get enough of Lindsay Lohan. But while everything seemed perfect on the outside, the pressure was building. Lindsay wasn't just a box office star, she was a brand. The expectations for her to constantly deliver were becoming overwhelming. With great success came even greater scrutiny. Every move she made was being watched. Every date, every outfit, every interview was analyzed, critiqued, and turned into a headline. At the same time, the pressures of maintaining that level of fame were starting to take their toll. She was the girl who could do no wrong. But was she starting to crack under the weight of perfection? There were whispers behind closed doors, murmurs in the media, and rumors that Lindsay wasn't as happy as she appeared. Could she keep up this pace? Was this the beginning of the breaking point? And then there came a moment, a turning point that would forever change Lindsay's trajectory. The fairy tale that Lindsay had been living was about to come to a crashing halt. With fame came the darker side of Hollywood. The pressure, the temptations, and the expectations that Lindsay couldn't escape. In the next chapter, we'll take a deep dive into Lindsay's downward spiral, as the girl who once could do no wrong found herself battling personal demons that made headlines across the world. At just 18 years old, Lindsay Lohan had already achieved more than most could ever dream of. She was living in a luxury mansion in Beverly Hills, driving high-end cars, and partying with the biggest names in Hollywood. The world was at her feet. Her net worth? A staggering $30 million, all earned by the time she was still a teenager. She wasn't just a child star anymore. She was a self-made millionaire with the world's most elite opportunities within arm's reach. The Parent Trap, Freaky Friday, Mean Girls. These films had propelled her into a level of fame that was unmatched by many of her peers. With every new movie, Lindsay's star only grew brighter. And in Hollywood, being 18 and already worth millions was the ultimate dream. The lifestyle she was living seemed like something out of a fairy tale. A Beverly Hills mansion filled with luxury. Furniture, a private chef, personal assistants, and a wardrobe full of designer clothes. The image was perfect. The dream was real, but beneath the surface, the pressure to maintain this life was beginning to build. In a way, Lindsay had already achieved the American dream, but it was a version of the dream that came with a dark undercurrent. She had everything, but was it enough? Did she still have the support she needed? Was she really as happy as her Instagram posts made it seem? In Hollywood, where appearances can often be deceiving, Lindsay's public persona was far more polished than what was going on behind closed doors. As her fame grew, so did the pressure to keep up appearances, to always smile, to always seem perfect. But was it all too much? At 18, she had everything the world thought she wanted. But as the saying goes, what goes up must come down. Was Lindsay ready to handle the storm that was just beginning to form on the horizon? The dream that Lindsay had been living was starting to crumble. And it wasn't because of lack of success, but because of the weight of the Hollywood spotlight. Lindsay's life was about to take a sharp turn towards controversy, personal struggles, and media frenzy. In the next chapter, we'll explore how Lindsay went from being a beloved teen star to one of Hollywood's most infamous tabloid targets. 2007, the year that would mark the beginning of Lindsay Lohan's fall from grace. Up until then, Lindsay had been on top of the world, but 2007 would become a year defined by chaos, controversy, and irreversible decisions. In May 2007, Lindsay found herself in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. After a night of partying, she was arrested for driving under the influence, DUI. The public reaction was swift and unforgiving. Lindsay was no longer the fresh-faced star we all remembered from The Parent Trap and Mean Girls. She was a tabloid target, someone whose personal struggles were now public entertainment. That arrest was just the beginning. Soon she found herself entangled in a web of rehab stints, court appearances, and media scrutiny. The once perfect image she had carefully crafted started to crumble in front of the world's eyes. Her personal battles became the subject of constant media coverage. The Lindsay Lohan that had been a Hollywood darling was now portrayed as a train wreck. In July of 2007, Lindsay checked into rehab, only to check out shortly after, and then check in again. Each time, her rehabilitation seemed less genuine and more like a public relations stunt. The cycle of arrests, rehab, and headlines continued. She couldn't escape the spotlight, and the more she tried to reclaim her life, the more the world seemed determined to tear her down. But the real turning point came in August 2007, when Lindsay was arrested again, this time for driving under the influence after a high-speed chase. This arrest made it clear that Lindsay was spiraling out of control. Her struggles were no longer private. They were the stuff of headline after headline. Hollywood, the industry that had once celebrated her, now seemed to look at Lindsay as nothing more than a tabloid spectacle. What happened? How did a $30 million net worth and a Beverly Hills mansion turn into a year of public humiliation and personal despair? As Lindsay's downward spiral continued, her Hollywood dreams were slipping further and further away. The price of fame was becoming too steep for her to pay. But what was the price? Was it the constant pressure, the partying, the toxic environment that Hollywood had created for her? In the next chapter, we'll look at how rehab became a regular part of Lindsay's life and how her once promising career continued to unravel. In 2007, Lindsay didn't just lose control over her actions, she lost control over the narrative of her own life. And the consequences of that loss would have a lasting impact on both her career and personal well-being. 2007 wasn't just a bad year for Lindsay Lohan, it was a year defined by public disgrace and criminal charges. By the time the year had ended, Lindsay had accumulated 3 arrests, each more shocking than the last. This wasn't the kind of fame that Lindsay had dreamed of. It was a nightmare. Her first arrest in May of 2007 was for driving under the influence, DUI. She had been pulled over after a night of partying, and the arrest sent a wave of shock through her fans and the public alike. Lindsay, who had once been the girl who seemed to have it all, was now a cautionary tale about the dangers of fame and excess. But the story didn't end there. In July of 2007, just a couple of months later, Lindsay found herself behind bars once again. This time, it wasn't just a DUI. She was charged with possession of cocaine. During a routine traffic stop, Lindsay's car was searched and officers found cocaine. The arrest was unbelievable. The girl who had once been the embodiment of innocence and stardom now had a criminal record. And then came August. The third and final arrest in 2007 occurred after another DUI and a high-speed chase. Lindsay had been driving erratically, and when police tried to pull her over, she sped off. It was the final straw. The mugshot that followed became an iconic image of a young star out of control, her once beautiful face now painted with the shadows of regret. 3 arrests in 1 year. Lindsay's public image was in freefall, and there seemed to be no way to stop the spiral. The tabloids had a field day. The headlines screamed about her reckless behavior, her partying, and her flawed decisions. She was no longer just a teen idol. She was a tabloid fixture, and the world couldn't look away. These arrests weren't just a string of bad choices. They were a symptom of something deeper, a combination of pressures, personal demons, and the toxic environment of Hollywood that seemed to demand perfection and self-destruction in equal measure. By the end of 2007, Lindsay wasn't just a star. She was a walking headline. And those mugshots, they were a symbol of her self-destructive spiral, a spiral that would continue into the next chapter of her life. After 3 arrests, multiple rehab stints, and a constant barrage of media attention, Lindsay found herself caught in a vicious cycle. The world's eyes were on her every move, and every time she tried to fight back, the media was there to tear her down. In the next chapter, we'll take a closer look at how rehab became a regular part of Lindsay's life, and how she tried, and often failed, to reclaim her career and her sense of self. By the time Lindsay Lohan reached 2008, her struggles were no longer just personal. They were a public spectacle. After her 3rd arrest in 2007, it became clear that Lindsay wasn't just battling her own demons, she was also battling an industry. That had made her the poster child for celebrity meltdown. The cycle began to form. Rehab, followed by relapse, followed by more rehab, then another rehab visit. Lindsay would check into rehab after another public scandal, only to leave with a promise of change and a fresh start. But every time she checked out, the glamour of Hollywood quickly consumed her again. And before long, she'd be back in rehab, as if the pattern had already been written. Between 2007 and 2011, Lindsay would check herself into rehab 6 times. 6 times. In just 4 years. 6 rehab stints in 4 years. Each visit was a sign of growing instability. The public watched, but it wasn't just a case of celebrity indulgence. Lindsay seemed to be spiraling into a world where the only way to escape the pressure and expectations was to retreat into rehab. The media had turned her into the very symbol of Hollywood excess and celebrity collapse. Her every move was scrutinized, and the unforgiving spotlight only intensified the pressure. In 2007, she checked into Promises Rehab in Malibu after her DUI arrests, but even that couldn't keep her out of the headlines for long. After just a short time, Lindsay checked out, only to find herself arrested again just weeks later. Each time she entered rehab, it became less about recovery and more about expectations. Lindsay wasn't a recovering addict to the public. She was the problem child of Hollywood, a cautionary tale of a star whose career had turned into a circus. But what made this cycle even more tragic? Lindsay was being suffocated by a world that demanded perfection but offered little in terms of stability. The pressures of fame, combined with her inner struggles, became too much to handle. Each rehab visit marked a desperate attempt to find stability, yet none of them seemed to provide her with the lasting peace she needed. Was it the constant media scrutiny, the family pressures, or the loneliness of fame that she couldn't escape? Unfortunately, the cycle continued. Rehab was becoming routine, but real recovery seemed just out of reach. But despite all of this, Lindsay's story wasn't over. There was still a chance for her to pull herself together. What would it take to finally break this vicious cycle and stop the revolving door of rehab and relapse? After multiple rehab visits and a string of public scandals, Lindsay's career seemed to be on the brink. But it wasn't over yet. The question remained, could Lindsay Lohan ever return to the Hollywood limelight? In the next chapter, we'll explore her final attempts to rebuild her career and whether the star who once lit up the screen could ever truly make a comeback. By 2010, the inevitable had happened. Hollywood had moved on. The girl who once seemed destined to become a legendary actress, someone with the world at her feet, now found herself struggling to stay relevant. The parties, the scandals, and the rehab stints had taken their toll, not just on Lindsay, but on her career. And when it came to the big studios, the ones who had once rolled out the red carpet for her, their loyalty ran out quickly. Gone were the days of Disney, Mean Girls, and the $7.5 million paychecks per movie. No one wanted to risk their reputation by working with Lindsay anymore. The girl who had once been the starlet of the moment was now viewed as more of a liability than an asset. She was a gambler's bet, and the house always wins. The studios were scared. Scared of her unpredictability, scared of her history with drug abuse, scared of her run-ins with the law. And even more than that, they were scared of the press. Having Lindsay Lohan in a movie was no longer seen as glamorous. It was seen as a public relations nightmare waiting to happen. In 2011, Lindsay tried to make a comeback. She was cast in the film Liz and Dick, a made-for-TV biopic about the late Elizabeth Taylor. The project seemed like a great opportunity for Lindsay to reassert herself, but the reality was far from it. The production was filled with delays, and Lindsay's behavior was once again unpredictable. Her performance didn't live up to expectations, and the film, despite some media attention, did not save her career. Even more crushing, studios began to publicly distance themselves from Lindsay. The world of A-list films no longer seemed interested. Lindsay was now the has-been, the actress who once had so much promise, but now couldn't seem to catch a break. She had been replaced in Hollywood, and perhaps the most painful blow, the people who once adored her were now on the sidelines, watching from a distance. The industry had turned its back on Lindsay, and the tables had turned faster than anyone could have imagined. What's worse, Hollywood had already begun looking for the next big thing, a new young starlet with the potential to take over. A new face to fill the void Lindsay once held. The studios didn't have time for flaws. They only had room for perfectly packaged stars. And Lindsay, no matter how talented she was, no longer fit the mold. The next few years would see Lindsay continue to try and push forward, but the doors that once opened wide for her were now closed, with no sign of them reopening. So what went wrong? How did someone who had the world in the palm of their hands, someone who could do no wrong, end up falling so far so fast? The next chapter, we'll take a deeper look at the causes behind Lindsay's fall from grace. Was it her personal struggles, the toxicity of fame, or something else entirely that led to the downfall of one of Hollywood's brightest stars? By the time Lindsay Lohan was in her 20s, the critical acclaim she once enjoyed seemed like a distant memory. The once celebrated child star had now become the punchline of every Hollywood joke. But what made it worse wasn't just the public criticism, it was the awards that would come to define her adult career. The Golden Raspberries, better known as the Razzie Awards. In 2010, Lindsay earned herself a spot in Razzie history when she was nominated for Worst Actress for her role in The Canyons, a movie that went almost completely under the radar but made waves for the wrong reasons. Not only did she receive a nomination, but she actually won the Worst Actress Razzie for her performance. That moment was a sharp contrast to the praise she had once received for her performances in The Parent Trap and Mean Girls. It was the exact opposite of everything Lindsay had once worked so hard for. The once promising actress had now become synonymous with failure and ridicule. But it wasn't just one film or one role. Lindsay had become a constant feature at the Razzie Awards, a recurring reminder that her career had shifted from acclaimed talent to mockery. Public opinion had turned, and there was no escaping it. Lindsay had gone from Hollywood darling to the actress no one wanted to take seriously. Her role in Liz and Dick, which aired on Lifetime in 2012, didn't help her image much either. The film was criticized for its poor production quality and Lindsay's lackluster performance as Elizabeth Taylor. Instead of being the triumphant comeback Lindsay had hoped for, it only gave critics more fuel for their fire. The Razzie Award she had already won wasn't just an isolated incident, it was a symptom of a much bigger problem. Lindsay Lohan was no longer Hollywood's golden girl. Her fall from grace didn't just come with the disappearing roles and shifting opinions, it also came with a new public persona. She had become known more for her train wrecks than for her acting talent. The same eyes that once admired her now watched with a mix of sadness, disappointment, and even amusement. Lindsay's reputation as a wild child had solidified, and Hollywood had quickly moved on, casting her aside, while more polished and less controversial stars rose to the top. And the most tragic part of all, she had the talent. She just couldn't escape the chaos that surrounded her. The public had witnessed Lindsay's slow unraveling, and with every public mistake, it felt like they were witnessing the death of a star. After years of being relegated to the sidelines, could Lindsay ever make a true comeback? Was there any chance left for the girl who had once captivated the world? In the next chapter, we'll explore Lindsay's final attempts to reclaim her career and whether she can overcome her past. Could there be a way for Lindsay to get back to the top, or was the damage done beyond repair? By the mid-2010s, Lindsay Lohan had earned a reputation for something that wasn't talent. No longer was she the actress known for her captivating roles or fiery charm. She had become known for something far more damaging: unreliability. Hollywood is a business of precision, of dependability, and above all, timing. Studios depend on actors showing up on time, delivering performances, and maintaining a professional attitude. But Lindsay, sadly, had become notorious for being late, unprepared, and distracted. The unpredictability that once marked her life outside of work began to seep into her professional career. Directors, producers, and co-stars had all come to expect the worst from her. The actress who once captivated audiences with her talent and potential was now viewed as a liability, an actress you simply couldn't count on. A prime example, Lindsay's infamous no-show at a shoot for The Canyons, the same film that would earn her a Razzie. Her lack of commitment and constant personal problems led to delays and frustrations that cost the production team time and money. Then came the rumors. Rumors that Lindsay was more trouble than she was worth. Hollywood insiders began whispering that the once bright star was more of a headache than a gift. The stories piled up, and Lindsay was quickly gaining a reputation for being one of the most unreliable actresses in the industry. This label stuck, and no matter how hard she tried to shake it off, it remained like a shadow over her career. Studios started pulling back from her, casting her aside, and eventually, leading roles became few and far between. But what's more alarming? Her behavior seemed only to worsen over time. The public and industry alike began to ask themselves, how could someone with such immense talent fail so spectacularly? How could someone so close to the top just completely fall apart? Even when Lindsay made efforts to work on projects, she wasn't trusted by the studios. She was no longer the young, promising talent everyone had once loved. She was the actress who couldn't be relied on, the one who was always late, always having personal crises, and always one bad headline away from ruining everything. Lindsay's fall from grace wasn't just a matter of bad career choices, it was about self-sabotage. At one point, she was the face of Hollywood's youth culture, adored by millions. But now, she had become the poster child for burnout, showing everyone how the relentless pressures of fame and self-doubt can unravel a young career. But what exactly drove Lindsay's decline? What happened in her personal life that ultimately bled into her career? In the next chapter, we'll dive into Lindsay Lohan's personal struggles and how they affected everything she once built. Was her downward spiral a result of Hollywood's pressures, or was there something deeper behind her struggles? From the outside, Lindsay Lohan's life appeared to be a dream come true. Flashing lights, red carpets, and all the luxury that Hollywood could offer. She wasn't just a child star, she was a global sensation, and she lived like one. In her early 20s, Lindsay was the definition of excess. Private jets, luxury cars, yachts, designer clothes, and exclusive parties were just a part of her daily life. If it was expensive, Lindsay had it. If it was rare, Lindsay owned it. The media couldn't get enough of her lavish lifestyle. They followed her every move, from impromptu shopping sprees at high-end boutiques to helicopter rides over the beaches of Los Angeles. A $200,000 Bentley, Lindsay had one. A 12-bedroom mansion in Beverly Hills, all hers. It seemed like the young star was living a fairy tale, but the reality of her situation was far darker than anyone could have imagined. Lindsay's extravagant lifestyle was fueled by the enormous earnings she made during her peak years. With a net worth that skyrocketed to $30 million before she turned 20, she had no shortage of funds to indulge her every desire. But that kind of money came with its own set of pressures. And as we know now, the bright lights and the fast life took a toll. both on her and her career. As Lindsay continued to rise, so did her need for validation through material wealth. The luxury became a part of her identity. It wasn't just about owning things, it was about showing the world she had made it. The fast cars were more than just transportation. They were a statement. The yachts weren't just vacation spots, they were a symbol of status. The designer clothes weren't just for special occasions, they were the uniform of a star. But, as with all things too good to be true, the money didn't last forever. As Lindsay's career began to falter, her spending habits didn't adjust. She continued to live in the fast lane, oblivious to the financial toll that would soon catch up with her. The extravagance that once defined her success had now become a trap, and the more she spent, the deeper the hole she dug for herself. Debt started to mount. The lavish lifestyle, once a mark of success, now seemed like a dangerous game of showmanship. Her financial troubles were never fully disclosed to the public at the time, but over the years, it became clear. Lindsay had been living above her means. The once glamorous lifestyle that the world had envied was now a reflection of reckless spending and misplaced priorities. The story of Lindsay Lohan isn't just about falling from grace. It's also about how the press fed off her every move, turning her into the ultimate tabloid queen. In the next chapter, we'll explore how Lindsay went from being Hollywood's darling to the subject of endless scandal and what it took to finally fade out of the spotlight. Was her fame a blessing or a curse? The glamorous life that Lindsay Lohan had built for herself began to unravel in ways no one could have predicted. Money, once a symbol of her success, became the catalyst for her fall, and no one could escape the long arm of the law, not even a Hollywood star. By 2012, Lindsay was facing a growing number of financial issues, ones that no amount of luxury could hide. The biggest shocker: her tax debt. Lindsay owed the IRS a staggering $233,000 in unpaid taxes. That's a number that most people can't even fathom, let alone a young woman who had once been worth millions. How did it get this bad? For starters, Lindsay had lost track of her finances over the years. The lavish lifestyle that she had once enjoyed came with a price, and it wasn't just about spending on designer clothes or private jets. Lindsay had failed to file her taxes properly, and years of neglect added up to a massive bill she could no longer ignore. In 2012, the IRS took action. They seized her accounts, including her bank accounts, assets, and any other funds they could get their hands on. The actress, who had once lived in Beverly Hills mansions and cruised in expensive cars, was now being forced to pay for years of financial mismanagement. But that wasn't all. Lindsay's legal troubles were mounting. The tax debt was just the tip of the iceberg. As the press had caught wind of her money problems, they began to take a deeper look at her entire financial situation. What they found was shocking. Reports started emerging about how she had squandered her wealth on reckless spending, relying on her fame to fund a lifestyle that was unsustainable. With the tax debt looming over her and her career in freefall, Lindsay found herself caught in a storm of financial and legal problems that no one saw coming. It wasn't just the IRS that was coming after her. Lindsay was also dealing with multiple lawsuits, creditors chasing her for unpaid bills, and other legal issues that threatened her freedom. What had once seemed like an endless supply of money was now gone, replaced by debt, repossessions, and endless headlines about her financial collapse. As her tax troubles deepened, the pressure mounted. She was no longer a Hollywood darling. She was a target of the IRS, of creditors, and of the media. Her public image, once filled with photos of her enjoying the finer things in life, was now clouded by images of mugshots, court appearances, and endless scandal. But could Lindsay Lohan ever rebuild her life? In the next chapter, we'll dive into what happened after her public fall from grace and how she's tried to reclaim her life and career. What happened to the girl who once had it all? Is there still hope for a comeback? Lindsay Lohan's fall from grace wasn't just about bad press or legal troubles. It was about the collapse of her career, one missed opportunity after another. In Hollywood, a missed contract can mean more than just a paycheck. It can close doors that were once wide open. And for Lindsay, those doors started slamming shut one by one. Missed contracts. Lindsay, once the darling of Hollywood, found herself in a position where major studios and producers were hesitant to sign her. It wasn't just her legal issues or her reputation that had soured, it was her track record. She was now seen as a liability, an actress who couldn't be trusted to show up on set, keep her commitments, or meet deadlines. And as contracts began to slip through her fingers, the opportunities started disappearing. At the height of her career, Lindsay could have signed deals worth millions, the kinds of deals that could have solidified her legacy in Hollywood. But constant drama, erratic behavior, and failed projects had left a stain on her name. Producers didn't want to take the risk of casting her in major roles. They didn't want to end up on set with a star who might not show up, or worse, bring drama that would derail an entire production. In 2008, Lindsay lost out on one of the biggest contracts of her life, a deal to star in The Lovely Bones, a film that went on to become a major success, starring Saoirse Ronan. At the time, it seemed like just another missed opportunity. But looking back, it was clear that Hollywood was moving on from Lindsay, and the momentum she had was beginning to fade fast. The missed payments followed soon after. Lindsay, who had once been living a life of luxury, found herself unable to keep up with her financial obligations. Bills went unpaid. Her personal assistant sued her for unpaid wages. Even the IRS was on her back, claiming she owed hundreds of thousands in back taxes. Nothing was getting paid, not the bills, not the debts, not even the payments she owed. Her team and her once booming fortune was shrinking rapidly. What should have been a future of endless opportunities was slowly turning into a future of missed chances, unpaid debts, and missed fortune. It wasn't just about losing money. It was about losing her reputation, her work ethic, and ultimately, her place in Hollywood. As Lindsay's career faltered, it was clear that her talent alone couldn't keep her afloat anymore. The big breaks she once had were long gone, and now it was all about rebuilding, if that was even possible. Hollywood wasn't known for giving second chances, and Lindsay's behavior had led to her becoming unemployable in the eyes of many producers. So, what happens when a once promising star has lost everything? In the next chapter, we'll explore how Lindsay tried to pick up the pieces after her fall from grace, through rehab stints, relapses, and an uncertain future. What happened to the girl who had it all? Was there any hope left for a comeback? $30 million. That's how much Lindsay Lohan was worth at her peak. She had it all. The movies, the deals, the luxurious lifestyle that so many dreamt of. But in what felt like the blink of an eye, her fortune vanished. Gone were the days of glamorous red carpets, expensive parties, and designer clothes. How does someone go from $30 million to just $800K? And why did it happen so fast? The crash was inevitable, but no one expected it to be this fast. While Lindsay had enjoyed a string of high-paying roles in her teens and early 20s, the excesses of Hollywood fame began to catch up with her. As her personal life spiraled into chaos, so did her bank account. The first signs of financial trouble came when Lindsay couldn't keep up with the massive spending. Private jets, luxury cars, expensive nights out. It all added up. Lindsay was living beyond her means, believing that the fame and fortune would last forever, but it didn't. Then came the failed projects and the missed contracts. Lindsay was no longer the A-list star she once was. Producers were wary of hiring her, and her box office appeal dwindled with every film flop. With no income from acting, Lindsay was left to rely on other sources of income, but the deals were few and far between. Her money troubles only grew worse when she was hit with legal fees and tax issues. Each year, it seemed like her financial burden got heavier. She was forced to sell assets. Even the luxury items she had once flaunted in front of the cameras were now being auctioned off just to stay afloat. By 2012, Lindsay's net worth had plummeted to around $800,000, a far cry from the $30 million she had once accumulated. And the worst part? She wasn't just losing money, she was losing time. The window for a Hollywood comeback was closing fast, and the opportunities to rebuild her fortune were slipping away by the day. What happened to Lindsay's money? How did she go from being one of the richest young stars in Hollywood to struggling to pay her bills? The truth is, Lindsay's financial collapse wasn't just about spending. It was a combination of poor choices, failed investments, and an inability to adapt to the changing tides of the entertainment industry. But this wasn't just about numbers. Behind the staggering $29.2 million loss was a young woman, a talented actress who had lost control of her own life. Lindsay's career, once brimming with possibility, had become a cautionary tale for every young star who dreams of the high life. And the worst part was yet to come. So, what happens when the world's brightest star falls? In the next chapter, we'll take a look at Lindsay's attempts to rebuild, how she tried to pick up the pieces after losing everything. Was there still a way back for Lindsay? Could she rise from the ashes and reclaim her place in Hollywood? Stay tuned as we dive into her efforts to overcome the wreckage of her once thriving career. Selling possessions, the act of parting with the very items that once defined your success. This was the new reality for Lindsay Lohan, the young Hollywood star who once had it all. Luxury homes, designer clothes, expensive cars, was now turning to the auction block to make ends meet. But was this just desperation or a calculated strategy? As Lindsay's finances crumbled, the luxurious lifestyle she once flaunted became a distant memory. Gone were the days of walking into high-end stores with a credit card that never seemed to max out. Now, Lindsay was selling her personal items, including designer handbags and expensive jewelry, on online auction sites, just to pay the bills. It wasn't just her luxury items, her homes were also put on the market. The Beverly Hills estate that had once been a symbol of her success was sold off, marking the end of an era. But selling possessions wasn't the only way Lindsay tried to stay afloat. She also started making cameos in films, TV shows, and even reality TV. Was this the act of a desperate woman struggling to regain her financial footing? Or was it a strategic move to rebuild her brand to show that she was still in the game? Cameos are a common way for former stars to make a comeback, small roles in major projects that can rekindle their fame and bring in some much-needed cash. Lindsay began popping up in low-budget films, TV guest spots, and even made a memorable appearance in the MTV show Lindsay Lohan's Beach Club. While these gigs weren't the leading roles she once commanded, they were a way for Lindsay to stay relevant and show the world that she wasn't ready to fade into oblivion just yet. But was it really enough to get back on top? The problem was, these cameos weren't bringing in the same kind of money or exposure she had once enjoyed. With every small appearance, Lindsay's value as a star continued to diminish. What was supposed to be a strategic move to make a return to fame started to feel like a last-ditch effort. So what was it? Desperation or strategy? Was Lindsay simply trying to survive in the world she once dominated, or was she attempting to reinvent herself, even if it meant taking the back seat in Hollywood? Regardless of the intention, one thing was clear: Lindsay's career trajectory had drastically changed. She wasn't the A-list actress who had once commanded millions. Instead, she'd become someone who was fighting to stay relevant, even if it meant selling her luxuries and doing small cameos. But what does the future hold for Lindsay? Is this really the end of the road, or is there still a chance for a comeback? In the next chapter, we'll explore whether Lindsay can make a return to Hollywood's A-list, or if her time in the spotlight has permanently passed. Stay tuned as we dive into the final chapter of Lindsay Lohan's journey. Goodbye, Hollywood. Goodbye, Beverly Hills. Lindsay Lohan's American dream had slowly slipped away. As her career, finances, and personal life continued to spiral, she made a bold choice, a decision that shocked many of her fans and the media. In 2014, Lindsay made the move to Dubai, leaving behind the streets of Los Angeles and the Hollywood spotlight that had once adored her. The question on everyone's mind was, why Dubai? Why leave everything behind to start over halfway across the world in the United Arab Emirates? The move wasn't just about escaping the chaos of her former life. It was about reinvention, privacy, and a chance to regain some control over her life. For many, Dubai seemed like the perfect escape. It's a city where celebrities and business moguls often go to reboot. There's luxury, discretion, and a certain level of freedom that comes with starting fresh. Lindsay wasn't just fleeing the media frenzy in America, she was also pursuing a more private existence. But Lindsay didn't just come to Dubai to disappear. She had plans, big plans. She opened a beach club in Dubai, capitalizing on her name and experience in hospitality. She also appeared in numerous interviews and TV appearances, but this time, the tone was different. Lindsay wasn't the young, rebellious starlet that everyone had seen spiral out of control. This was a new Lindsay, older, more introspective, and ready to prove she could succeed in a completely different environment. Dubai offered Lindsay something that Hollywood never could: a second chance without the constant judgment of the American media. In fact, she became somewhat of a local celebrity in the UAE, hosting exclusive events and parties for the wealthy, elite. There, in the heart of the Middle East, she found a new audience, free from the critical eyes of Hollywood's harsh spotlight. But the big question remained, was this truly a fresh start, or was it just another attempt at running away from her past? By moving to Dubai, Lindsay had left behind not only her troubles in Hollywood, but also the weight of being a tabloid fixture. Yet, even in Dubai, the shadows of her troubled past loomed large. While she might have found peace and success in a different part of the world, could she ever truly escape the legacy of her former self? With her life in Dubai, Lindsay has tried to rebuild, but questions still remain. Can she truly leave her old life behind and embrace this new chapter, or is she simply hiding from the inevitable truth? In the next chapter, we'll explore Lindsay's ongoing attempts to find herself, start anew, and escape the ghosts of her past. Will she come back stronger, or will Dubai remain her final sanctuary? Stay tuned as we uncover what's next for Lindsay Lohan in this chapter of her life. Why did Lindsay Lohan leave America behind? After years of public struggles, controversies, and a life constantly under the media microscope, Lindsay's decision to move to Dubai raised more questions than answers. Was it truly for privacy and peace? Or was it a desperate attempt to escape the unbearable pressure that came with being one of Hollywood's most troubled stars? For years, Lindsay's every move was tracked by paparazzi. Her personal life, her relationships, her arrests, and her rehab stints were laid bare for the world to see. In Hollywood, she was no longer seen as a rising star, but as a train wreck in real time, and the cameras never stopped rolling. The relentless scrutiny became so overwhelming that the idea of living a life free from it seemed like a dream. one that seemed impossible to achieve in the United States. When Lindsay made the move to Dubai, she found something that had been sorely missing in her life: privacy. Dubai is a place where celebrities can enjoy their wealth without the constant press coverage that follows them in America. There, she could walk through the streets without being chased by photographers, and her every word wouldn't end up on the front page of tabloids the next day. She wasn't just trying to escape the drama, she was seeking something she had long lost: the ability to breathe without judgment. But was that the only reason? Could it have been the pressure of living up to the image she had created in Hollywood? Or was it the need to escape her past, the weight of failed careers, strained relationships, and a history that seemed to haunt her every day? Dubai offered not just privacy, but a way to disappear, at least for a time. There, she wasn't just Lindsay Lohan, the tabloid fixture. She could be someone else, a woman who was rebuilding her life and starting fresh. But as much as Lindsay sought peace and privacy, there were also whispers of her being drawn to Dubai's luxurious lifestyle. The wealth, the exclusivity, the parties. It was everything Lindsay had once lived for. Was it truly peace she was after? Or was it the very thing that had caused her downfall? The need to be adored, to live the glamorous life that Hollywood had offered her but taken away? The question that remains is, did Lindsay really leave Hollywood for a fresh start? Or was it more about leaving behind a world that had become too overwhelming and too critical? Could she truly find peace in Dubai? Or was it simply the latest chapter in a story of running away from reality? As Lindsay Lohan tries to carve out a new life in Dubai, many wonder if her Hollywood legacy will ever truly fade. In the next chapter, we'll look at her lasting impact, the lessons learned from her rise and fall, and the future, whether she's on the brink of a comeback or will fade into the background of pop culture. What's next for the woman who once captivated the world? Stay tuned to find out. After settling into her new life in Dubai, Lindsay Lohan didn't stop pursuing the dream of rebuilding her career and life. But in 2016, she took another bold step, this time opening a beach club in Greece. It wasn't just a new business venture. It was Lindsay's way of reasserting herself in the world of hospitality and tourism. But the question remains, was this a legitimate business move? Or just another distraction from the reality she was trying to escape? The Lohan Beach House opened on the Greek island of Mykonos, one of the most glamorous destinations in the Mediterranean. The idea seemed perfect. Take the Hollywood experience, mix it with luxury, and create an exclusive space for the wealthy and famous to unwind. The beach club was sleek, stylish, and had all the trimmings of a high-end getaway. Lindsay herself made regular appearances, adding a touch of celebrity allure to the venue. For a time, it seemed like she had found a new calling. But was it really about business? For someone who had faced financial ruin, was Lindsay trying to rebuild her wealth and brand? Or was the beach club just another way of keeping up appearances? A way to keep herself relevant while avoiding the harsh realities of her fading career? The timing was questionable. After years of financial struggles and missteps, Lindsay had shifted from Hollywood stardom to entrepreneurial endeavors that seemed more about staying in the limelight than building long-term success. The Lohan Beach House certainly attracted attention, but it also raised eyebrows. Critics pointed out that Lindsay had a track record of failed ventures. Previous businesses had come and gone, often accompanied by drama, mismanagement, and, in some cases, financial losses. Was this another distraction, a way to escape the looming questions about her career, her finances, and her personal life? But on the other hand, the beach club was not just another one-off endeavor. It was a serious investment in a booming tourism industry, and Lindsay wasn't just a passive investor. She was involved. She designed the place, interacted with the guests, and even used it as a platform to relaunch her public image. Some saw it as a potential new chapter for Lindsay, while others viewed it as yet another attempt to cling to the spotlight without confronting the deeper issues in her life. Was it a smart business decision, or simply another example of Lindsay trying to fill the gaps in her life with distractions? As the years went on, questions about the future of the beach club and Lindsay's role in it became more urgent. Was this just a temporary project, or was it the beginning of something more stable? As the club's fate became uncertain, Lindsay's involvement in the business began to dwindle. The questions mounted. Could the Lohan Beach House survive, or was it another venture that would implode, just like so many of Lindsay's past projects? In the next section, we'll explore the eventual collapse of the Lohan Beach House and what it says about Lindsay's journey through the business world, as well as her struggle to stay relevant in a changing industry. Stay tuned to uncover the shocking end of her Greek venture. Lindsay Lohan's story is one of extremes, rising from a promising young actress to a tabloid target, then struggling with personal demons and legal issues. But somewhere in the midst of all this chaos, a quiet transformation was taking place. It wasn't the type of transformation the media was used to reporting. No dramatic comeback, no headline-grabbing scandal. Instead, it was a personal evolution. a shift in how Lindsay saw herself and how the world saw her. Religion and spirituality became a cornerstone of this change. After years of public turmoil, Lindsay began to find solace in her faith. She converted to Islam in 2016, a move that surprised many. She was often photographed wearing a hijab and sharing moments of prayer on her social media. But it wasn't just about religion, it was part of a larger rebranding effort, an attempt to reinvent herself and put the pieces of her broken life back together. This transition wasn't without its controversies. Rumors circulated, especially about her conversion. Was it genuine, or was it just another attempt to draw attention? Could religion really offer her the peace she desperately needed, or was it just a public relations stunt? The media's response was mixed. Some praised Lindsay for finding a path to peace, while others dismissed her transformation as yet another phase in a long line of public reinventions. But for Lindsay, it was something deeper. She took on the role of a businesswoman, entrepreneur, and social media influencer. With a quieter, more spiritual approach, Lindsay distanced herself from the reckless behavior that had plagued her earlier years. Her social media posts became more reflective, showcasing her travels, her new lifestyle, and even her charitable work. She seemed focused on building a life far removed from the Hollywood hustle that had once defined her. It wasn't just about religion or faith, it was about leaving behind the chaos of her past. Lindsay was looking for something stable, something that would allow her to reclaim her identity without the baggage of being the former child star turned scandal magnate. The quiet transformation was a reminder that there's always more beneath the surface than what the media chooses to see. But, as with many of Lindsay's attempts to change, the road to redemption was anything but smooth. With rumors swirling about her new life and motivations, Lindsay's journey was still far from over. Would she be able to shed the past for good and find the peace and success she craved? Or would her past always come back to haunt her, no matter how many changes she made? While Lindsay's transformation seemed like a step towards redemption, her struggles to maintain relevance in an ever-changing industry were far from over. In the next section, we'll explore the challenges she faced in trying to revive her career and why the comeback everyone was waiting for never truly came. Was Lindsay destined to always be remembered as the star who once had it all, but lost it just as quickly? For years, Lindsay Lohan's life had been a non-stop media circus. Paparazzi followed her every move, tabloids printed her missteps, and fans and critics alike scrutinized her from every angle. The constant cameras and incessant attention seemed to have a devastating toll on her mental health and personal life. But then, something happened that no one expected. Lindsay disappeared. The Lohan silence was deafening. No more wild parties, no more court appearances, and no more dramatic headlines. It was as if she had vanished from the public eye overnight. The press that had once been obsessed with her every misstep suddenly had nothing to report. No paparazzi, photos, no Instagram posts, nothing. It was a silence that spoke volumes. Fans and critics alike were left in suspense. Was Lindsay simply done with the Hollywood spotlight? Had the pressures of fame become too much for her to bear? Or was this yet another chapter in her ongoing reinvention? For the first time in years, Lindsay was controlling the narrative, and the narrative was silence. But why the sudden withdrawal? Was it self-imposed, a conscious decision to escape the relentless scrutiny, or was there something more at play, something deeper that caused her to disappear from the limelight? Behind the silence, Lindsay was taking steps toward anonymity. She moved to Dubai, a city far from the paparazzi frenzy of Los Angeles, and embraced a life away from the flashing cameras. The move to Dubai was not just about escaping the spotlight, it was a deliberate choice to rebuild her life in peace, far from the chaos of her past. As Lindsay built a new life in Dubai, the media's curiosity only grew. People wanted answers. They wanted to know where the former star had gone and whether she was on the brink of another scandal. But Lindsay's silence spoke louder than words, and it was clear that she was no longer interested in participating in the fame game. The question remained, would she ever return to Hollywood? Was the Lindsay Lohan who once graced the red carpets and starred in blockbusters really gone for good? Or was she simply waiting for the right moment to make her return in the next chapter? We'll explore why Hollywood might not be ready for Lindsay's comeback, and how the industry that once adored her now sees her as a risky gamble. Will she ever be able to shake off her past and prove that she's ready for a second chance? Stay tuned to find out. After years of being absent from the Hollywood spotlight, Lindsay Lohan made a comeback, not on the big screen, but through a groundbreaking docuseries. In 2013, she teamed up with Oprah Winfrey, the Queen of Media, to film a docuseries that would reveal Lindsay's journey of self-redemption. The stakes were high. Lindsay had been through years of legal battles, rehab stints, and public humiliation. Now, Oprah was willing to invest in Lindsay's story, offering her a reported $2 million for the project. The deal was a gamble, not just financially, but emotionally. Would this docuseries turn the public's perception of Lindsay around, or would it expose even more of her flaws? The docuseries, titled Lindsay, was billed as a raw, unfiltered look at the actress's life post-Hollywood fame. It promised to show Lindsay at her most vulnerable, confronting her demons, battling addiction, and trying to rebuild her career and reputation. But it also promised a chance at redemption, a second chance in the eyes of the public. The show aired on the OWN network and was highly anticipated. Millions of people tuned in, hoping to catch a glimpse of the former star's true self. It was, after all, an exclusive opportunity to see Lindsay in a light she had never been seen before, vulnerable, honest, and trying to get her life back together. But what was the result? Instead of the comeback story many had hoped for, the docuseries exposed Lindsay's difficulties, her strained relationships, and her struggles to stay on track. Instead of fame and fortune, the show showcased a troubled woman fighting to find her footing. It wasn't the fairy tale comeback that everyone envisioned. Instead, it left many viewers questioning whether Lindsay could ever truly escape her past. The series failed to capture the kind of massive audience Oprah had hoped for, and in the end, Lindsay's gamble with the docuseries seemed to pay off, just not in the way anyone expected. Was it the final nail in the coffin for Lindsay's public image, or was it simply another chapter in her long road to self-discovery and rehabilitation? The docuseries, while highly publicized, ultimately didn't offer the redemption arc the world was waiting for, but it did give us something different, an honest look at a woman who, despite everything, still had the will to fight for her future. $2 million for a story that perhaps was not ready to be told, at least not in the way people expected. As Lindsay faced the aftermath of the docuseries, she found herself back at square one, trying to reclaim her place in an industry that had already moved on. But the biggest challenge of all lay ahead. Could Lindsay truly overcome her past and find a way to stay relevant in an industry that had already labeled her as a has-been? In the next segment, we explore why Lindsay's comeback never fully took off, despite her efforts. As Lindsay Lohan stepped back into the spotlight with Falling for Christmas and her Netflix deal, one of the biggest questions on everyone's mind was, how would the public react? For years, Lindsay had been the center of tabloid fodder, her every move scrutinized by the media. From her troubled past to her erratic behavior, public opinion had swung from adoration to outright disdain. So, as she attempted a comeback, would people show sympathy, remain skeptical, or fully support her? Sympathy. Some fans were ready to forgive and forget, understanding that no one is perfect. They saw Lindsay not as a fallen star, but as someone who had faced incredibly difficult challenges that weren't entirely of her own making. The truth was, her story wasn't just one of fame, but also of personal battles that were often played out in the public eye. From family issues to addiction struggles, Lindsay had been pushed to the brink, and for some, her vulnerability was the very reason they felt for her. Fans posted supportive messages on social media, rallying around her when she posted updates about her life and career. They hoped that Lindsay would finally find the peace she had been searching for, and they cheered her on, believing that she deserved a second chance. But for others, the skepticism was hard to ignore. Skepticism often reigned, particularly when it came to her long-term ability to stay on track. After years of failed comebacks, it was hard for many to believe that Lindsay could maintain the stability needed for a Hollywood comeback. After all, she had burned bridges before, and Hollywood had shown time and again that it was quick to turn its back on stars who fell from grace. The media, too, played a crucial role in shaping the narrative. Headlines that praised Lindsay's performance in Falling for Christmas were often tempered with reminders of her checkered past. Tabloids seized every opportunity to bring up her history of arrests, rehab stints, and public breakdowns. And even when she made positive strides, the media's cynicism remained, casting doubt on the authenticity of her transformation. Then, there were the haters, those who just couldn't accept that the once tabooed Lindsay Lohan could ever be seen in a positive light again. Some fans felt she'd wasted her talent, while others believed that her efforts at redemption were nothing more than a publicity stunt. Every new headline about Lindsay seemed to reignite the cycle of criticism and backlash, making it clear that no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape the weight of her past. So, what about Lindsay herself? How did she feel about the public's reaction? On one hand, she certainly seemed to welcome the support. She posted on social media, engaged with fans, and even expressed gratitude for the second chance she was given. On the other hand, it was clear that the constant scrutiny had taken its toll. In interviews, Lindsay was often guarded, yet her desire to reclaim her former glory shone through. Ultimately, the public's reaction was a mixed bag. Some were quick to offer sympathy, others remained skeptical, and a portion of the public supported her efforts, but were cautiously waiting to see if this newfound stability was here to stay. The question lingered. Was this comeback attempt a genuine effort to reclaim her place in Hollywood? Or was it another chapter in the endless cycle of comebacks and failures that Lindsay seemed to be caught in? The reactions were divided, but one thing was clear. Lindsay's future was still uncertain. Could she rise from the ashes of her past and reclaim her spot in Hollywood, or would she forever be haunted by her turbulent years? In the next part, we'll look at what it would truly take for Lindsay Lohan to regain her place in an industry that had turned its back on her. After everything, the early stardom, the falls from grace, the arrests, the rehab stints, and the endless headlines, the big question remains. Will Lindsay Lohan ever rise again? For years, the world has been waiting for Lindsay to make her comeback, to return to the days of red carpet appearances, blockbuster films, and box office hits. But after so many false starts and failed comebacks, is it even possible? The road to redemption for Lindsay has been anything but straightforward. Her career, once on top of the world, seemed to unravel faster than anyone could have predicted. Her past is littered with the wreckage of missed opportunities, tarnished relationships, and a reputation that many still associate with scandal and chaos. But here's the truth. Hollywood loves a comeback. The industry is filled with stories of stars who fell hard but managed to claw their way back to the top. From Robert Downey Jr. to Drew Barrymore, there is a long list of actors who struggled with addiction, personal issues, and public scrutiny, only to return stronger than ever. The question isn't if Lindsay can come back, it's whether she has the strength, resilience, and drive to make it happen. Lindsay herself has shown moments of self-awareness and determination. Her decision to leave the chaotic, paparazzi-filled life in the US and seek a quieter existence in Dubai speaks to a desire for peace, balance, and control over her narrative. This time, it wasn't about playing the Hollywood game, it was about finding herself and giving her a chance to heal and grow away from the constant pressure. But does that mean she's ready for a full Hollywood comeback? Can Lindsay Lohan, once the darling of Hollywood, ever return to the limelight and reclaim the crown that once seemed to be hers for the taking? It's a question that only time will answer. Let's not forget, Lindsay is still young, and though she's had her fair share of setbacks, she's proven time and time again that she's resilient. From acting in a Christmas movie on Netflix to starting businesses and finding success abroad, Lindsay has shown that she's not ready to give up on her career just yet. But the industry? It's not the same as it was. The days of Lindsay being the lead in major films may be over, but the world of streaming, television, and social media offers new opportunities, ones that didn't exist in the early 2000s. Can Lindsay reinvent herself in a new era? One where stars are no longer defined by box office performance, but by personal brand, entrepreneurship, and influence? That's what we'll have to wait and see. But as much as the world loves a comeback story, Lindsay's journey will need to be much more than just a return to her former self. It will need to be about growth, maturity, and redefining what success means to her. So, will Lindsay Lohan rise again? The truth is, only Lindsay knows. Whether it's in Hollywood or outside of it, only time will tell if she can overcome the hurdles of her past and emerge as the force she once was, or perhaps evolve into someone even more remarkable. One thing is for certain, her story is far from over. The final act is yet to be written, and no matter what happens, it will undoubtedly continue to fascinate, inspire, and challenge those who follow her journey. As Lindsay's future remains uncertain, her past holds valuable lessons for the entertainment industry, celebrities, and even the fans who once idolized her. In the next part, we'll explore the legacy Lindsay Lohan leaves behind, the lessons her rise and fall have taught us about fame, mental health, and what it truly means to be a star in Hollywood. If you've enjoyed diving deep into the world of Hollywood scandals, stars, and everything in between, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Stay up to date with the latest Hollywood hot topics, exclusive stories, and behind the scenes. Secrets that the tabloids don't want you to know. Join the conversation. Comment below with your thoughts on Lindsay Lohan's journey and what you think her future holds. We want to hear from you. For more shocking celebrity stories and in-depth analyses, subscribe to Hollywood Hot Topics and never miss an episode of the hottest gossip in Tinseltown.